Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a video with a wee bit of a change this afternoon. Celtic are close to returning, we're back in action this weekend. However, it's a quiet news day, which means I needed a wee bit of assistance, and more specifically, your assistance. We're going to be going through your opinions, and more specifically, we're going to be going through your controversial opinions. That's right, it's one of those videos, so buckle up. If you haven't, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. We are so close to 49,000 subscribers. Let's get there over the next few weeks. It's absolutely free. Go down, press both of those buttons. And this video serves as a wee bit of an advertisement for members of the Ryan 118 community as well. So some of you may be aware, but most of you probably not, we have a wee Ryan 118 Discord community on the go where today's video basically spawns from. I woke up this morning, seen there was no news, no transfer rumours, no injury reports, no press conferences, and decided I would use that Discord, the power of the Ryan 118 community, to fuel a wee opinionated video today. I popped a message in there this morning and lo and behold, I have a host of ridiculous opinions to go through today. So if you want to join the Ryan 118 Discord community alongside some of the channel members and just public subscribers, there will be a link in the top line of the description. You can join that and chat away about anything you like. There's channels for all different sorts of conversations, from football to more specifically Celtic related convos to wrestling to video games. I think there's a Ryan 118 community pro clubs team at this point. Literally anything you could dream of with like-minded people. The link will be in the top line of the description. The last few weeks at Celtic have been a bit rocky. There's no denying that. We've seen us lose to Hibs a few weeks ago, which really brought on a bit of a downer following European disappointment. We of course lost the derby in the last game before the international break, and especially with it being at home, it caused a wee bit of an online sensation in the reaction to that. So today I decided to try and harbour all of those thoughts, all of those opinions, and we're going to put it into this video, specifically focusing on what comes next for Celtic in the eyes of the supporters, whether that's to get rid of players, whether that's to focus building the team around a specific player. I have so many opinions to get through. You know how these videos work by now. I'm going to try my best to not ridicule anybody here, but you've put your opinions out in the open, so that essentially gives me the right to slag you. I've tried to sort the opinions into sort of genres, so we're focusing on the same sorts of things as the video goes on, and we're going to start specifically with a midfielder at Celtic who has been hot and cold this season, but really gathering some opinions of all different natures. That player is Reo Hatate, who this season has been a weird one, hasn't he? I don't know how else to word it. It's been really weird with Reo Hatate this season. He's had his ups and downs, his peaks and troughs, and there's been a real inconsistency about his game, but he still remains one of the most technically gifted players at Celtic Football Club, and I truly believe that. But the online opinion would lead you to believe that he's finished and his Celtic career has come to a dead end. So we're starting with Jack today, saying that Reo Hatate is similar to Ncham. He's brilliant on his day, but has been very underwhelming too many times this season, which I think is a fair assessment of Reo Hatate this season. I think that some people get a little bit OTT about it and saying that he's beyond hopeless. He's a very good player and we know that, but it has become a bit of it's a bit of an occurring theme, isn't it, with the whole on his day comments, because it seems like we're saying that a lot about Hatate. It's Hatate on his day. The worst part about Hatate is how good he is, and we know how good he is, but he just doesn't show it on a week-to-week basis. We're relying on him to step up in big games, and sometimes he's just not doing that. But I still know how good a player is there. I certainly don't think he's rubbish. We just need that consistency in his game. And those inconsistencies have led to a lot of these opinions that Reo Hatate should be sold in the summer. Now, I don't quite know what I make of that. I think he's a great player, and I always use this phrase when talking about selling players. Be careful what you wish for. You don't know how hard it's going to be to replace him, and you don't know what you have until it's gone. Not to get all cringy and sound like I'm a love song or something here, but you really don't know what you have till it's gone. He's a fantastic player, and I think that Celtic will truly miss him whenever he leaves. Should we capitalise on the potential value of Reo Hatate now? I can see why people would make that argument, but I'm all for trying to keep consistency in the team. I'm all for trying to keep the best players around the team. And Reo Hatate truly has it in him to be one of those best players. I think from here till the end of the season is a real test for him. If he can show us on a consistent basis and remind us on a consistent basis exactly who he is, then I would love to see him stay here and be here next season. But I can understand the people who maybe want a bit of freshness in the midfield. I'm certainly not disputing that there's an argument there. And this is why I love these types of videos, because now we're just seeing a complete 180 and somebody here whose username I'm not even going to try and pronounce, saying that Hatate's had a much better season than Arne Engels and arguably been the best, I think this is meant to say best midfielder all season. And maybe he's just not been up to the expectations because of how high he set them since he arrived at the club. But he's scored some important goals. He's obviously had some big assists. He's rhymed off some of the games here, in fact. And yeah, he's been getting too much abuse just because of his style of play, which everybody loved under Ange, in the username's words. Look, listen, this is what I'm trying to say. I think that, you know, some people really don't realise how good a player we have here, and some people are very quick to try and shove players out the door. I don't agree with him being the best midfielder at the club this season. I just can't agree with that. I don't think that's... It's all about opinion at the end of the day, and that's the whole point of this video, but I don't think it's an opinion I can agree with. I think Engels has been a better player. I think Callum McGregor has been a better player. Hatate's probably been the most frustrating out of the three, in my opinion, but I certainly can agree with the importance that he adds to the side, and the important goals, the important assists. I can see that logic, and I can see that part of it, and that's why I think that maybe we should be careful about wanting to see him go in the summer. Talking about who to move on in the summer, we've got Adam saying that Carter Vickers, Hatate and Kuhn will all be moved on in the summer. Now, first thing I want to say is, and I don't know if this is exactly what you've meant, Adam, so apologies if I get you into a bit of bother here, but I don't like the use of the phrase will be moved on, because I don't think, especially Carter Vickers, should be moved on. If a move comes up for Carter Vickers and Celtic can't reject it because of the money or because Vickers wants to take the move, that's fine. But the words will be moved on implies to me that we should be washing our hands of them and going, right, it's time to get rid of them. Carter Vickers is unbelievable. I want to see him stay the rest of his Celtic career, or the rest of his footballing career at Celtic. I will be gutted the day he leaves, and I'll be truly worried the day he leaves. Nicolas Kuhn, Reo Hatate are two players who I could realistically see go if bids come in. If they're bids that are deemed acceptable by the club, and if they're moves that obviously pique the interest of the players themselves. But what I will say is, just to end this segment off, if we want to build in Europe, if we want success in Europe, doesn't matter your opinions of Hatate and Kuhn right now just because they've maybe been off the boil a wee bit. Doesn't matter if Kuhn's maybe been a wee bit quieter these past few weeks. He's obviously a pivotal part of the success we saw in Europe this year. And we're never going to make progress if we keep chopping and changing. If we keep selling our best players. If your mind works in a way where it's short-term success for players or nothing, football might just not be the sport for you, because players will dip in and out of form. And Kuhn hasn't been good enough these last few weeks, but he showed how good he can be. On that note, summer, it's a big topic in itself. I'm not going to speculate who might be here or who might not be here. All I care about is Celtic keeping their best players and adding to that squad. And these are three of the players that I think are part of a very good Celtic squad. Which leads me nicely into this one from Whiskey Mikey, who said controversial opinion, and hence the reason he's called it controversial, because I do find it slightly controversial, and that's fair. Saying he thinks that the way that Kuhn has stopped playing not long after his goal against Bayern at the Allianz is almost like he was auditioning for the Bundesliga or the national team, and that he played his heart out just on that night and seemed to stop once he scored. He's been a very good player, very good servant for us this season, but I actually would rather have someone who will play their heart out. And this is what I'm saying, I just don't think that's fair. I don't. And I think that us as Celtic fans have a real problem, and this isn't directed at you, Mikey, son, so don't think I'm taking this out on you. But I think us as Celtic fans have a real problem with understanding that players won't be the same quality every week throughout a 38-game domestic season, plus European football, plus cup competitions, plus potential international football. It's really difficult, and there's very few players in this world who have achieved that sort of greatness. And you look at even some of the best in the world right now. I remember periods of time where Harry Kane looked unarsed, couldn't buy a goal. I remember periods of time where Wayne Rooney, my favourite ever, and in my opinion maybe the greatest English player of all time, had periods where he looked like he was just not trying and wasn't doing well enough. I remember periods where, honestly, the list could go on. There's players that have just had their moments and then maybe it's dipped for a couple of months. Nicolas Kuhn has been fantastic and he's up there for a Player of the Year nomination. His goal contributions this season have been crazy and he's still been getting assists. Maybe not as many as it was at the start, and maybe the goals have dried up a wee bit, but he's still getting goal contributions. And I don't think that's fair to say that he doesn't play his heart out. And I think the general intensity of Celtic has maybe dropped off in recent weeks, maybe through complacency that we're so far clear. I don't think that specifically lies at the feet of Nicolas Kuhn. He's been getting a bit of competition from Yang, and that should hopefully wake him up. But no, listen, I think that we'll see Nicolas Kuhn bring it back to the heights he's already showed us at some point, whether that's this season or next season, I don't know. But I'm in no rush to replace him. I think that we can certainly look to add quality and competition to those sorts of areas. I would love really good wingers in their numbers. But no, listen, it's a controversial opinion for a reason, and I understand that, Mike, and I understand why some people might agree with you. But for me, I think he's been great. He's dropped off a wee bit, but happens with basically every Celtic player. So moving on to the sort of next segment, we're going to be talking about the current Celtic squad right now and moving into next season. We start with Luca, who says Gustav Lagerbielke should be given another chance. I think he's got something. And we've spoke about Lagerbielke very recently because his name popped up following interest in permanent transfers to Holland after a very impressive loan spell at Twente. And I was thinking and reading that maybe that warrants an opportunity at Celtic. We brought him in with a very good write-up. We heard that he had a lot of potential and was one of the best young players in Sweden. He's went over now to the Dutch Eredivisie, which is a good league, arguably a better league than Scotland. And he's performed really well to the point he has Ajax's scouts talking about him. Should Celtic be looking at the money they've spent on him and looking at the form that he's maybe picked up at Twente and going, right, he could be of use to us next season? Honestly, I think you could make that argument. The only problem for someone like me is, and I think for the majority of Celtic fans is, I'm not going to sit here and pretend for a moment I've been watching him play at Twente. If you think I'm sitting watching Eredivisie games week in, week out to see how he's doing, you're off your nut. So I can't say that I think he's got something because I've simply not seen enough of him. I'm only going off what the journalists are saying and what's coming out in the media. But I would like to see him given one more chance. I think he was very unfairly wrote off for one reason or another. And it was a really weird situation in general. So, look, if they want to give him another chance, that's fair. But what I will say is, to wrap up my opinion on the Lagerbielke stuff and maybe giving him another chance, is Celtic shouldn't be neglecting the centre-half position going into this summer window, because I think it's an area that still needs depth, still needs quality. And I don't think a lot of Celtic fans would be happy with Lagerbielke maybe being the answer to that. So it shouldn't be ignored. Adam says that Paulo Bernardo should be starting every game when he's back. Every game. Wow. Look, listen, I can't wait for Paulo Bernardo to be back, and I think this is probably the least controversial opinion I've seen thus far in the video. I think this is an opinion that a lot of Celtic fans will be agreeing with right now. There has been a little bit of a drop-off in some players, and obviously we've spoke about Hatate a lot in this video, and I think just a lot of us miss seeing Paulo Bernardo. So, look, listen, realistically, he's not going to be able to start every game because it's going to be about getting back to full fitness. It's going to be back to managing his minutes when he's first in this squad again. But I think if he comes in and performs really well on his first appearance, whether that's from the bench or starting, yeah, he should be in line for a few starts before the end of the season, because he's someone who has real quality. And I think the manager knows that. We all know that. So I would love to see him given that opportunity. But we're still waiting to hear the updates on his fitness situation, his injury situation. And I think we need to wait for that until we make a well-versed decision on the matter. It's 2025. It's 2025, and I'm still seeing the name Giakoumakis. Let him go. please, I beg of you, let him go. I will seriously talk about it for a moment because it's came up a couple of times. First of all, we have Lucas saying, get Georgios Giakoumakis back, and then Sean saying that Giakoumakis was a better player than Ida, spent a lot less on him too. And look, listen, I'll start with Sean's point because I think that you could make the case he was a better player than Adam Ida. He was a great player, Georgios Giakoumakis. In fact, I'm not going to rewrite history just because I'm fed up of hearing his name. If you go back and watch my videos from his time at the club, I was a huge fan of him. In fact, I was maybe one of the only voices on this platform saying that I'd rather him started over Kyogo for a while. I was a huge Giakoumakis fan. He was my type of striker. Hence the reason I really like Adam Ida, because I think they've got those sort of similar presence or similar styles when it comes to, you know, presence, physicality, size, whatever. But I think you can make the genuine argument that Giakoumakis so far has been a better player at Celtic. You know, it's all depending on who you prefer at the end of the day. But Giakoumakis was great, got a big move over to America, now he's playing in Mexico. Fair play to him, it's nice to see him doing well. He didn't want to be here. He wanted to move. He went where the money was. He went to the MLS, and that's fine. That's okay. I accepted that, and I've moved on. And that's why, you know, when I see people going, get him back, we need to accept he's gone. He's away. He's not coming back. He's 30 years old. He's just got started at Cruz Azul in the Mexican top flight. He's not going to come back. And I don't think Celtic will ever acknowledge that fans want him back, because it's just that those days are gone. Now, obviously, that comes a lot back to now Adam Ida. Has he been good enough? Do we need options? Of course we need options. We only have one recognised striker at the club, and that is Adam Ida. So, despite what your opinions are of him, whether you think he's good enough or not, we still need one. But it's not going to be Giakoumakis. It's not going to be. And I actually want to make this a conscious effort to make this the last time I ever mention his name in the channel in this sort of context. Unless I'm reminiscing and we're looking at a tier list or whatever, I don't want to talk about Giakoumakis ever again. Continuing the theme, talking about the current squad, we had Hoope saying that Callum McGregor retiring from international football was a brilliant idea and probably giving him a few more seasons in football. I wholeheartedly agree. I think you only need to look to the most recent example of Kasper Schmeichel to suggest that Callum McGregor has taken the wisest route. Look, I'm not going to tell anybody what they should do with their football career. I respect the hell out of Kasper Schmeichel for staying with the Denmark setup, and this injury won't change my opinion of that. In fact, I made this point in my live stream last night. Kasper Schmeichel owes a whole lot more to the Danish national team than he owes Celtic. So who are we as Celtic fans to say that he should be retiring from the international setup for our own benefit so that he doesn't get injured for Celtic? It's unfortunate, it's very frustrating, but I'm not going to sit here for a second and go, oh, he should have retired or he shouldn't be playing for them anyway. It's not my place to say that. He's been at Celtic for fucking months. He doesn't owe us shit. So, but when it comes to McGregor, yeah, I agree. Especially as an outfield player, it's a bit different for a goalkeeper, I suppose. It's been very unlucky for Schmeichel. I mean, how often do you see that happen? But for McGregor, you know, all it takes is one dodgy tackle out there and bang, he's in a stretcher. And getting older, it can be harder to recover from these injuries. Yeah, he made the right decision. I think we all said that at the time anyway. So, I don't think this is a controversial opinion by any means. I think we all really agree with this. Last one on the current squad, Cammy saying the fan base as a whole are too quick to judge our academy players. We expect them all to be the next McStay, Tierney, Callum McGregor, and essentially saying that we just don't give them enough of a chance. And I think there's an element of truth in that. I would say, Cammy, you're right to a certain extent. I would also argue that at the same time, most of these players are just maybe quite simply not good enough. Do they deserve more chances? Of course they do. And when we can give them the chances, when we can afford to give them the chances, we should give them. But I just think that there's clearly a reason that most of them aren't getting into the first team at the minute. They're playing in the Lowland League, which is the 5th tier of Scottish football. It's a huge, massive, seismic jump to the Scottish Premiership when it comes to quality. Guys that play for St Johnstone, who are bottom of the Scottish Premiership, would look like Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo down in the Lowland League. So there's a huge step up. And yeah, I think our fans, including myself, can be too quick to judge. But I think, you know, we know what we're looking for and we know the quality. So when somebody's maybe not quite there, it's really easy to tell. So there is an element of truth for what you're saying. We need to stop thinking about Tierney, McGregor, etc. when it comes to these youngsters. But once again, I've said this before, it's a Scotland problem. We're just not producing good enough youngsters at the minute. And I think that's to be said about everywhere because we're seeing it in the Scottish national team. We're not seeing enough youngsters in there either. It's not a Celtic problem, it's a Scotland problem. So let's finish off with the couple which I just consider all-out controversial opinions, perhaps. First of all, we're talking about eras, and what eras are the best, and what's overrated, and what's underrated. Here we had a wee battle between Adam and Luke. Adam started off by saying the Ange era at Celtic was more enjoyable than the current Rodgers era, and Luke saying that the Ange era was overrated, and his lack of success in Europe proves that. Now, what I'll say to this is, there is no right or wrong answer. Nobody has the right or wrong answer to this. The more enjoyable era is for you to decide. It's subjective. It's not a right or wrong. Nobody can say that one was definitively better than the other, because some people will just prefer other periods of time. What I will say, and what I'll caveat all of it saying is, or caveat it all by saying is, at the end of the day, if Celtic are doing well, I'm having fun. I don't care if it's Brendan Rodgers, Ange Postecoglou, or my dad, who's in charge of Celtic. I could not care. If we're winning trophies and trebles, bloody Mr. Blobby could be in charge, for all I give a shit. I have been so lucky that in my lifetime we can sit and look at eras and go, oh, that one was more enjoyable, when they're all very good eras. We have been blessed as Celtic supporters. But to say that one is more enjoyable, that's your own opinion. In my eyes, the more enjoyable times as being a Celtic fan has been when Brendan Rodgers has been in charge, and this season has been magnificent. I've followed Celtic over Europe this year. I went to Munich and was this close to seeing us pull off a miracle. And I seen us go to Parkhead and confidently take on every side who came there. We've done so well in Europe. I've not felt like that in a decade. I never got that under Ange. So I have enjoyed this period far more, by a whole lot of a distance. But I still loved that Ange era. It was amazing. Actually, I take it back, not by a whole distance, just marginally, because it was so good with Ange as well. Listen, we need to stop being so picky about what we enjoy more and what's overrated or underrated. We have been blessed, but it's up to you to decide when the funnest time you had as a Celtic fan was, not me or anybody else. And the most controversial opinion I've seen in the Discord today: the swing will take place next season where they'll push and potentially win the league. Confidence will be booming after the Ibrox derby. Cam, are you sure you're not a Rangers supporter? I feel like I hear this same thing every year, no matter how big the gap. No, listen, you're perfectly entitled to have that opinion. With everything that's going on over at Rangers, you're allowed to think that way if you like. Me, personally, I don't. If Rangers come back and do something next year and they get close or, win the league, I'll hold my hands up and say, well, they've done it, fair enough, cool, whatever. But as I sit here right now, I don't have enough evidence to suggest that that will be the case. This takeover is going to be massive. It's going to change the landscape of football in Glasgow eventually, but not instantly. And I think a lot of people need to understand that. A lot of Rangers fans and Celtic fans need to understand that. A football takeover isn't the case of them coming in and spending 200 million straight away. There's rules and regulations, there is books to balance, there's debts to pay off, there's players already in the wage bill. This isn't a video game. And I think a lot of, especially, this isn't directed at you by any means, Cam, but there's a lot of younger Celtic fans who think that football's FIFA or football's Football Manager. And you can come in and you can sell 25 players and bring in 25 of your own. It's not like that. Rangers are miles behind Celtic for a reason. Rangers are not lifting a trophy this season for a reason. And yes, one day the switch will come. It's part and parcel with football. It's the natural order of football that teams will go up and down and will have their spells of dominance. Celtic have been down and out. Rangers have been on top and vice versa. It will come. The day will come. Whether I'm alive through it or not. But to say that it will happen next season, you seem a lot more confident than most other Celtic fans, Cam. I'll give you that. I think that we're going to be waiting a while yet. Right, that does it for today's video. I've dragged it on a little bit longer than I would have liked, so I'm going to wrap it up. If you've enjoyed, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Let me know all your opinions to the opinions down below, and I'll see you all next time.